have to lay people off, terminate them, fire them from their jobs. But for many businesses, if they were with big banks like Wells Fargo or Bank of America and weren't a big commercial customer, they didn't make it in on time before the funds ran out. And I know you said, well, there was PPP 2. There was, but again, there were a lot of people already in queue from PPP 1 who made it in PPP 2. And I know people personally who have small businesses who still have not received any funds for that, for their businesses, and had to lay people off. In addition to that, they've already extended the timeline when you're going to have to pay or not pay it back, because if you fit a certain criteria, which nobody really fully knows yet what that criteria is or how to prove that criteria, so it's kind of been difficult for businesses. And then there are businesses that have come late to the game, if you will. They were trying to stay open and keep their employees paid. They didn't realize how bad COVID would affect them. For some, COVID hit them right off the bat. And for some other companies, it took a few months. And by then, PPP was up. Then it was extended, but there were no new applications being put forth. So the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, was designed to serve the smallest businesses and struggling nonprofits, providing hard-hit businesses with second loans and delivering targeted assistance for the struggling restaurant industry and independent live venue operators. So this would be a second PPP round available for those that either didn't get it the first time around or still need more to keep their companies afloat and to keep their employees being paid. It also includes a second round of 1,200 payments per taxpayer and 500 per dependent. And that would, and also they would extend the weekly, the federal unemployment payments that I was talking about. They would extend those through January. It would be $600. And of course, it would be retroactive, I would imagine. Although I don't know that for sure. I'm imagining that. But even if not, I mean, if you get it for October, November, December, that's that's 90 days more than you would have had it, and that's $400 a week more, or $1,600 a month than you would have received from the Republicans. It provides $436 billion a year's worth of help to state, local, territorial, and tribal governments. And by the way, that was one of the reasons that Democrats would not come down more. The two big reasons Democrats would not budge on the money, with House Speaker Pelosi rightly leading the way on this, was one, they were not going to drop from $600 a week to $200 when people need that and have been relying on that in addition to their unemployment. And remember, you're only talking until the end of the year or through the first month of next year. And then, of course, state, local, territorial, and tribal governments, Republicans, the president and others are like, we don't want to help you, right? The Fed doesn't want to help. Nancy Pelosi, the speaker, has frequently said that Democrats would be willing to drop $1 trillion from the HEROES Act if Republicans would come up with $1 trillion. And she did, right? In July, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell proposed a roughly $1 trillion bill. It was dismissed by Democrats as a half-hearted, half-baked legislative proposal. And this is what Speaker Pelosi wrote. Quote, Democrats are making good on our promise to compromise with this updated bill. So they cut money, but they didn't meet her halfway with regard to help to state and local governments and agencies and the $600 federal addition to the unemployment funds. Progressive advocacy groups and labor leaders are urging Senate Republicans and the Trump White House to stop stonewalling and immediately approve a COVID-19 relief package that was unveiled yesterday late in the day by House Democrats. Lee Saunders, who's president of the 1.3 million member American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, most of you know them as AFSCME, said in a statement last night that the latest iteration of the HEROES Act, quote, represents a good faith effort to renew constructive negotiations and finally deliver the relief that families and communities need. And by the way, Republicans are being stupid here, because if Democrats and Republicans work together, they both could win at the ballot box coming up just weeks away in November, if they help people out there who are struggling now. I don't care what Wall Street says, and I don't even care what the unemployment rate says. It's what people feel. And if you're out of work and have been out of work and you had $600 a week stripped from you on top of it, and Republicans are not the ones coming to the table with that money, who you going to blame at the polls? I would hope it would be Republicans. Saunders continued, quote, the ball is now in the court of Senate Republicans and the White House, as it has been for more than 4 months, absolutely. While the Senate has wasted no time trying to illegitimately jam through a Supreme Court nomination, which seems to be their priority over the American people and their wishes, the majority of Americans, over 60%, want the court seat filled by the next elected president to wait on filling the seat. And two, a majority of American people don't care about that. They care about the economy. They care about health care. They care about racial injustice, and certainly COVID is under that umbrella of healthcare. And we are in the worst public health crisis in a century. It continues to rage on, and Speaker Pelosi's overture provides another opportunity, Saunders went on to say, to put progress ahead of partisanship and get something done. Now, the NEA, the National Education Association, they're the largest labor union in the United States. They've applauded the House Democrats for putting forth, quote, a plan that prioritizes the nation's students, educated schools, and campuses in the continued fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. And they said, quote, the NEA president, Becky Pringle, quote, this is the second time House Democrats led by Speaker Pelosi have stepped up with a health and economic plan that meets the nation's needs. Absolutely. And stands in stark contrast to the months of time wasted by Mitch McConnell, who hit the pause button while the pandemic continued to rage. House Democrats have again stepped up. Will McConnell and the White House ever do the same? Good question, Becky. I don't know. Look at what their goals are. Their agenda has been, quite frankly, since Barack Obama's been elected. It's to block Democrats, right? Let's rip another. And are we doing, Marky Mark, are we doing 2 rounds of ripped or 1? We're going to take a break. He'll tell me in the break. Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue with Rip from the headlines. And then after the next segment of Ripped, we will have our great guest on, and we will be with you right after that. I'm Leslie Marshall. Don't go away.
If you're worried your friend may be struggling, remember, you don't have to be there to be there.
You could say, how are you, or get a fake tattoo. You can ask with an app if it works for you. You could write them a text or knit them a sweater. If you can't be together, you could write them a letter. Whatever gets you talking. Whatever gets you talking. You could chat on the game, kick off your flip-flops. You could ask on your couch while you binge watch. However you do it, you gotta ask a friend. And if they don't share, you can ask again. Whatever gets you talking. Whatever gets you talking.
Reach out to a friend about their mental health. Learn how you can help at seizetheawkward.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and the JED Foundation.
I was in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean when it happened. There was a sudden jolt and our submarine crashed on the seafloor. We were in total darkness.
That's Dr. Dejana Figueroa, a marine biologist and STEM teacher, talking about a deep sea dive she'll never forget.
It's funny, when I was a kid, I was afraid of the ocean, and there I was, 2 miles below the surface. But as a scientist, you prepare for that. Using our training and a little creativity, we fixed the sub and finished our experiments. The dive was just too important. Every dive gives us glimpses at things few people ever get to see. Glowing creatures, fiery undersea volcanoes. When we got back to the surface, I kissed the ground and called my mom, of course. But you know what? I wouldn't trade that dive for anything.
Dr. Figueroa uses her passion for STEM to discover new things and make the world a better place. She can STEM, so can you. Check out She Can STEM for more stories and inspiration. A message from the Ad Council.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1789. That was the day that the United States Congress officially created the United States Army. Not everyone agreed that the U.S. should have a standing army. 2 years earlier, at the meeting that drafted the U.S. Constitution, James Madison warned against a permanent federal army. He told those at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, quote, "A standing military force with an overgrown executive will not long be safe companions to liberty." Since Madison was a strong proponent of a centralized federal government, his caution about the Army was noteworthy. Perhaps these warnings is why it took Congress until the last day of their session to finally approve the measure. In fact, President George Washington had to write Congress not once, but twice to get them to act on the issue.
If you miss Leslie on TV this week, catch up at lesliemarshallshow.com.
We are back. Happy Tuesday. I'm Leslie Marshall. Welcome or welcome back. Only True Democracy in Talk. We're here with our second segment of Ripped from the Headlines. We'll continue with that. And after this segment of Ripped from the Headlines, we're going to take a brief break and we will bring in our guest and we're going to talk about tonight's first presidential debate between former Vice President Joe Biden, the Democratic nominee, and current incumbent Republican nominee and the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. So stick around. But right now, we'll continue our riff from the headline. The White House put the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention under immense pressure to produce more evidence that suited the Trump administration's agenda to send kids and teachers back to school in person before the election, despite the raging coronavirus pandemic. That's according to a report from the New York Times. Now, let me tell you this. If this is true, and I say that because sadly there are people that report things, we hear retractions, then we have witnesses that come out and say, not true and not entirely true, although I tend to believe it, not because it's the New York Times. It just goes with the MO of the president. As a parent, you're seriously willing to endanger my kid's life so you can be reelected? And some of you want to vote for somebody like that? Just saying. Anyway, one member of Vice President Mike Pence's staff claims that she was repeatedly asked to instruct the CDC to write more reports that showed a decline in virus cases among young people. The staff member is not anonymous. Her name is Olivia Troy, and she said she regretted being, quote, complicit in the effort. She left the White House in August. Troy confirmed an incident in June in which she and junior staffers were pushed by Pence's chief of staff, who was Mark Short, who tried to circumvent the CDC in finding data on COVID-19. And they wanted data that would better support President Trump's stance that COVID-19 poses little danger to kids and that schools should reopen. What? Now, another official, who is a public health official but did not want to be named, told the Times that before a task force briefing in June, White House officials asked the CDC for support of data in, quote, a snazzy, easy-to-read document. Recent data shows that hospitalizations and deaths from COVID-19 have increased at a faster rate in children and teens than among the general public. You're not hearing that, are you? That should be the big news story in every network, by the way. One coronavirus tracking project has reported at least 30,000 cases in schools in the United States since just the school year began, and that's just a few weeks ago for many schools here in this country. More than 587,000 children in the United States have now tested positive for COVID-19. That is since the beginning of the pandemic earlier this year in March, and that is according to the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Children's Hospital Association. It's a 15% increase in cases in children between September 3rd and September 17th. What happened on September 3rd, folks? Schools reopened. Let's review. Oh, and I just want to say, my kids are down the hall doing work. I love them, but they've been like little devils and demons, and the teachers call me and they email me, and it's driving me nuts. I want them in school. So in case you think it's like, oh, you don't want to send them back to school because you're a liberal. Oh my God, I want them to go back to school. I want them to go back to school. It's very hard working from home with the 2 kids and the new puppy and the constant eating and the messing and emptying the dishwasher 3 times a day, taking out the trash 4 times a day, blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, whine, wah. I get it, okay? But I'm just saying, this is not political. I want my kids to go back to school. But if it's not safe, even though the evidence shows there is a lesser chance that they will end up in the ICU or die, you know somebody's going to end up in the ICU, and somebody, even if it's one, and it won't be one, it'll be hundreds or thousands, will die. You don't know what underlying health condition you have. You don't even know what underlying health condition your children have. And I have that even more because one of my children's adopted and I don't know their biology. So is it worth the risk for political gain? Anyway, I digress. Let's rip another for real this time. Former aides to President Trump tell The Atlantic's McKay Coppins that the president regularly mocks his own evangelical Christian followers behind their backs. Now, this I totally believe as well, okay? Because I'm sorry, but I have to be very nice. Let's just say, sometimes you see these things online with people who love Trump and they look and sound and act ridiculous. And not because they love Trump. We certainly have some crazies on the left as well. But I will bet when some of those crazies who are dressed really weird and being really weird, and say, I love you, Donald Trump, and all that, I am certain, I would bet money I'd go to Vegas that he's getting on that bus or that in that car or on that plane and being like, oh my God, or do you have Purell? I'm serious. That's my vibe. That's what I'm sensing. Okay. So I believe that he would mock his own base, evangelical Christians as well. Donald Trump is not a religious man. He never has been. And Christians deep down know that. By the way, if not, Christ does. In particular, the aides say the president sees many evangelicals in the same way that he reportedly sees American soldiers who died in World War I. He considers them, quote, suckers and losers. Coppin wrote that former aides told Coppin they've heard from Trump that Trump ridiculed conservative religious leaders, dismissed various faith groups with cartoonish stereotypes, and derided certain rights and doctrines held sacred by many of the Americans who constitute his base. You know, and I know it's sad, folks. They won't care. They won't care. They drank the Kool-Aid. They've drank so much Kool-Aid now that he has become their Jesus. Don't really. If you're a Christian and you are, and there's nothing Trump can do that would change your mind, you're a Trumper. You're not a Christian. I'm sorry, because Christians are supposed to be followers of Christ. And how can I say this? Okay, can I just do my little rant for a sec? I have a Jewish parent, a Christian parent, and married a Muslim. And in 2004, I had a son that passed away. Don't need to talk about that. I'll get too weepy. And I really was soul searching for God. And I really was soul searching for comfort from God. And I was really soul searching for the truth. And one of the things that I didn't like in any religion was the judgmental attitude of many of those within the religions and the hypocrisy, the sexism, list goes on. And that would be in the big three: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And I've been a Jew, I've been a Christian, okay? And I walked away from Christianity because, much like Gandhi, I couldn't find Christ among Christians. And I know some Christians get upset by that. My mother gets that. She's a very strong, born-again Christian who voted for Hillary and will not vote for Donald Trump because she doesn't see him as being Christ-like. But there's this whole group of evangelicals that deep down in their heart of hearts, if Jesus walked in their bedroom tonight and said, okay, Charlie, time to go. But before you do, let's have a little chat. You know they're going to admit, well, adultery is wrong. Bearing false witness or lying is wrong. You know that they're going to say that cheating on your taxes is wrong, right? I mean, the Bible is filled with when you do something, do these unto the, what you do unto the least of them, you do unto me. And I'm paraphrasing. Also, what you do, in private, your Father in heaven sees. I mean, the list just goes on and on. But so I have 30 seconds and I'm being told I got to shut up because we're going to take a break. So that's what's ripped from the headlines. That's not my 2 cents. But I have never understood how evangelicals could have followed him after he mocked that disabled reporter, because Jesus would never have tolerated that, my friend. I'm Leslie Marshall, back in a moment.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Can I touch this? Where does sand come from? Is this tree good for climbing? What happens if I mix these two things together? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Storing your guns securely is the best way to prevent family fire, including unintentional shootings. For more information on safe gun storage and ways to keep your family safe, visit endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org.
What do we keep in the attic?
Can they hear me in the break?
What's this thing called? Can I ride my bike backwards?
Hello.
Like
Don't
I
talk
said,
about me
kids
'cause
are
I can
curious.
see you.
It's up to us to keep them
No,
safe.
actually,
Brought to you
it's so
by
weird.
End Family
2 things.
Fire,
Well, one,
Brady,
since you
and
have
the
a
Ad
picture
Council.
of you and your dog, my dog just tore up my Starbucks latte cup. All over the
Text
place.
and eat. Text and catch the bus.
You want to know,
Text
I
and
had
miss
an
your
English
stop.
mastiff at one time.
Wait.
That
Text and
drank
be late to
coffee
work.
every day.
Sorry.
Really?
Text
Swear
and
to
work.
God. Swear to God. Yes.
Text and pretend to
But
work.
I was hoping.
Text and
before
act
I knew
surprised when
Mark
someone
had
calls
booked
you out
on
for
the
not
show,
working.
I was hoping you were on
Text and meet up with
the
a friend
show.
you
Am I
haven't
going to
seen in
see you? Because
forever.
I see a
Well,
still.
I don't know why you
Text
can't
and complain
see me.
that they're
Hold
on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time.
No.
Text
How
and
about the
whatever.
bottom?
But when you get behind the wheel,
Oh, I
put your
know
phone to a
why. Hold
passenger.
on.
Put it in the glove box.
Hold on. Hold everything.
Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org.
Mark, can you call me right back? Give me
A public
2 seconds.
service announcement brought to you by the National Highway
I
Traffic
know
Safety
why, 'cause
Administration
you gave me a
and
Google
the Ad
Hangout
Council.
link, and I'm over there.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1789. That was the day that the United States Congress officially created the United States Army. Not everyone agreed that the U.S. should have a standing army. 2 years.
For millions of people around the globe,
Now, can you
especially young people, the pressing issue of our time is this. The world is on fire. On
Look,
fire
Leslie
with
and I
climate
were, like,
change,
matching in
creating a
black.
new and intensifying norm
Yes,
of
yeah.
deadly
I didn't
weather
even
extremes
know.
that make a
I have to wear
dystopian
black all the
future
time.
a
It's, they
distinct
say it's
possibility.
swimming, but I don't. I
Constant
think it's just a
wildfires,
crock
rising
that we
seas,
bought into.
desertification,
Girl,
global
I-
crop
you think
failure,
I'm wearing it
widespread
by
hunger,
accident?
water shortages, etc. Luckily,
So I'm
we are a
surprised that you're
sentient
not
species
in
with the
Cleveland
scientific
tonight.
ability to
No,
that the
You
chief
know-
cause of this global destruction is not angry gods, but us. Specifically, humankind's massive extraction and burning of oil, gas, coal, and other fossil fuels. So there's a rising chorus of people shouting, "Fire!" And sure enough, our national government is rushing to the scene to put it out. Unfortunately, our president and his crew of right-wing fire breathers in Congress are not directing the government's hoses at the corporate extractors, but at us, the people, scientists, environmentalists, and other activists who've dared to point to the flames and call for global action to stop the conflagration. They seem to think the problem will go away if they can make the protesters go away. Worse, they're fanning the flames by turning the EPA into the PPA, the Polluters Protection Agency. They're slashing dozens of public restraints on the polluters while also opening up our oceans and wilderness areas to their polluting greed and stalling the rational shift to a green energy future. This is Jim Hightower saying the good news is that the people are revolting, in the very best sense of that.
Follow Leslie on Twitter. Just go to www.twitter.com/Leslie Marshall, and we'll be sure to share your tweets. Follow Leslie on Twitter. Just go to www.twitter.com/Leslie Marshall, and we'll be sure to share your tweets.
How you doing? I am excited to have this next guest here. I actually, Marky read my mind because I was hoping that we would have him on tonight. I like him personally. I like him professionally. He knows politics. He knows certainly about debates, and he knows the Democratic nominee very well. Moe Vela is in the House. Moe served in President Obama's administration as the Director of Administration and his senior advisor in the office of Vice President Joe Biden. The stint was the second White House appointment for Mr. Vela, who served as Chief Financial Officer and Senior Advisor on Hispanic Affairs for Vice President Al Gore. He holds the distinction of being the first Hispanic American and gay American to serve twice in a senior executive role in the White House. His Twitter handle is @MoeVela, @MoeVela. Hey, Mo, I'm happy to have you with us. Big first night. Thank you for joining us. First up, do you think that Trump's a little, and the campaign is a little scared? And I say that because they were talking about Joe Biden, not being with it, not going to show up, in a state of cognitive decline and despair. And then they just started saying some positive things about Joe Biden, kind of reversing all of that, which leads me to believe when they see him in these interviews and he's not using a teleprompter, he's pretty sharp.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And Leslie, I'll tell you what, they're in for a little bit of a surprise. A few things, right? One, Joe Biden is an incredible debater. Actually, when it's one-on-one, those large Democratic debates, I don't think anybody shines in those because it's just a chaotic mess. But when it's one-on-one, Joe Biden is quite amazing. Number two, I think, and personally, I think tonight is a phenomenal night for our side because the vice president gets to contrast so dramatically with 80, 90 million people around the world watching tonight. This contrast between a man who acts like a president, looks like a president, speaks like a president, right, has the leadership and the experience to be a president, and then the petulant child who wallows in the trash and the mud.
You know what? Speaking of debates, when Joe Biden was at the vice presidential debate, prior to Barack Obama being reelected, or no, elected or reelected against Mitt Romney, and he debated Paul Ryan. My husband, who's not political, came in the room, watched for 20 minutes, and said he should be the candidate. I felt that he wiped the floor with Paul Ryan.
Yeah.
It was almost like, let me show you how this is done, boy. And there are people on the right that clearly saw a different debate because they're like, are you kidding me? That wasn't a strong bet. I thought it was extremely strong, and the stakes are higher because this is not second. This is not co-pilot. This is you are the man. You are running to be the president of the United States. And on top of that, you are running after 4 years of Democrats crying since Hillary Clinton lost, hoping they will be saved from this mess that we are in.
Yeah.
So you talk about it. You worked with the former vice president. Do you think that Americans watching, or anyone in the world watching, but Americans especially who are going to vote in November, do you think that tonight Joe Biden will gain some votes? Because let's talk about that. How much do debates help a candidate?
Well, fundamentally, very little.
Right.
Right. Traditionally and fundamentally, very little, as you very well know. In this particular election, in my humble opinion, I think it's even less because the undecided vote in this, we're so polarized. The vast majority of people have made up their minds, Leslie.
Right.
So you're talking to a very small sliver of people. But I will tell you where the opening is for Joe Biden, in my opinion. And that is that Obama-Trump voter in the battleground states. That, in my opinion, is what is at play tonight in this debate. If Joe Biden does what I believe he will do tonight, he will get more of those back to the Democratic side, that Obama-Trump voter, that non-college educated white man in the battleground states, where I think that's the last little room to play in my humble opinion.
So you're talking about the white blue collar worker in Michigan, Wisconsin,
No
Pennsylvania as an example.
And you can see them breaking already toward
Right.
the Biden direction. So to me, that's all that's left out there, because as you know, Trump's base, it's not going anywhere. Right?
How does he do that, Mo? If he called you and said, I want you to tell me how to do what you just said, how would you advise him to do that?
I would say, Mr. Vice President, it doesn't matter what the topic is. Every single answer, I think you need to answer from your Scranton upbringing and your Delaware roots, and going back to what you have lived as a middle class, working class family that the Bidens were in Scranton and in Delaware, right? That's Joe Biden's entire life has been around work unions, middle class Americans, fighting for them, being their voice. And I would say, whether it's COVID or whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's even climate change, Leslie, it doesn't matter. I would say, Mr. Vice President, answer everything from your heart and answer it through the eyes and the prism of middle class and working class America.
Well, what I can't remember the exact quote. It would have been a great bumper sticker, which is, it's Park Avenue or Scranton, right?
Yes,
something
absolutely.
To that. And so that's what, he needs to do tonight. Very interesting. Before we get to the questions that my colleague at Fox News, who I have the utmost respect for, Chris Wallace, I do feel Chris is a fine journalist because he left or right. And the thing I like about Chris Wallace is if somebody's being a petulant child, I think he will take control. By the way, for years, sadly. And I also think that he won't take the switch and pivot on the answers by either candidate. Or if I were running for office and Chris Wallace were the moderator, I'd be nervous because he's tough, but he's fair, but he's very tough, and I'm looking very much forward to him moderating tonight.
Ironically, Leslie, Ironically, he's probably the only one left at Fox who is fair.
Me.
And you, of course. I'm so sorry. Of course, you.
There's a lot more people at Fox that are fair about
it was a joke.
Before we get to that, one of the things that Donald Trump does, as you know, and his supporters love it, is he goes for the jugular personally, and with personal attacks. Just showed a glimpse of his no malarkey blue collar, just a guy from Scranton upbringing when he said, in my day, we take a guy like that out in the back. On the left Democratic progressive crowd went nuts. Should if punched.
Strategically and very rarely. I predict, here's the one thing. Let's go back a little bit in Joe Biden's life. He was horribly bullied as a child.
For stuttering, right?
For stuttering. The last to do is be victimized, right? And be bullied of 85 million people. So will he punch back? I think he will. But I think it's going to be more like, yeah, you petulant child. Now, let me tell you, America, what I plan to do for you as your president. And that's how I would handle it. Yeah, sure, whatever.
And you know what? His wife, Jill, gave a see how a real president acts on that stage. So, that's interesting. I want to get to some of the 6 questions. The debate is moderated by Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace. It begins at 9 p.m. Eastern. It's held at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. And the first question is, ahead of the debate, just looking at some questions. One is, can Trump avoid the sitting president first debate slump? Now, some people may, but you and I know about that. Quickly before we go to break, can he avoid it?
I don't think he can avoid it, but it's not because of the traditional first-term president re-election slump. I think it's just because despicable. So I think his slump will be for a bit different reason, but he will slump.
Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about some of the things to look at in this debate tonight. From Cleveland, Ohio, the first presidential debate. People said Joe Biden wouldn't show up. I always knew. You always knew he'd show up.
I never back down. He's ready to rumble.
Okay, we're going to take a break, and we're going to be ready to rumble when we return with Moe Vela. I'm Leslie Marshall.
America, your children have an amazing superpower. They can help save lives by not having play dates. That's right. By replacing get-togethers with virtual play dates and video chats, they can help slow the evil spread of germs. And if your superheroes do go outside, make sure they continue their superhero wing by staying 6 feet away from others to protect everyone in America land. Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council. America, your children have an amazing superpower. That's right. They can help save lives by simply washing their hands. Just 20 seconds of thorough hand washing after they've coughed or sneezed or been outside can help fight against the dastardly spread of germs. Armed with only soap and water and hands, your superhero can protect you, your family, and everyone out there in America land. Amazing! Find out more at coronavirus.gov. A message from the CDC and the Ad Council.
He was the heart of your family, and he taught you our history. He helped you fix your first flat. He was the best backyard DJ around. And every time he'd tell a story, he'd own the room. But now more than ever, he may feel alone. Today, older adults and their loved ones are struggling to connect in a time when connection has never been more important. But there is something we can do. Embrace our older loved ones through StoryCorps Connect. With StoryCorps Connect, you can honor seniors remotely with an interview about their life. Every interview will be archived at the Library of Congress, becoming part of American history, so that years from now, future generations can listen in.
All right, Grandpa, what's one piece of advice you have for me?
Just 3 words, sweetheart. Live with courage.
The man that had the best stories still has plenty of stories to tell. So connect virtually and share the conversation of a lifetime at StoryCorpsConnect.org/AARP. Connect, honor, share. StoryCorps Connect. A message from AARP, StoryCorps, and the Ad Council.
Welcome to Code WAC, your podcast on America's broken healthcare system and how Medicare for All could help. I'm your host, Brenda Gazzar. Today, we'll talk about how Latinx immigrants are faring amid the coronavirus pandemic. Angelica Salas is the longtime executive director of CHIRLA, which she transformed into a mass membership immigrant-led organization, advancing their human, civil, and labor rights. So how would you say Latinx communities here in SoCal have been affected by the coronavirus pandemic?
It's devastating. I had the unfortunate experience to both have family members who are suffering from coronavirus, who have been infected, some who have been able to survive it. But then also in our membership at CHIRLA, we have seen members who have passed away because of coronavirus. These are immigrant workers, Latinos, Latinas, who are working because there is no safety net for them. And so their survival is work. And that means that they put themselves in a very vulnerable and very dangerous situation.
So what can be done to alleviate these challenges?
Well, first and foremost, I think during this moment, there should be no distinction in terms of immigration status. There really should not be a distinction as to who gets care or who gets this access to a safety net, who's, able to stay home to take care of their health and who's not. That just all these distinctions make no sense during a global pandemic. We believe that there should be full immigrant inclusion in all aspects of care, including health care.
Find more Code WAC episodes on progressivevoices.com and on the PV app. You can also listen to Code WAC at heal-ca.org. This podcast is powered by Heal California, uplifting the voices of those fighting for healthcare reform around the country. I'm Brenda Gazzar.
If you miss Leslie on TV this week, catch up at lesliemarshallshow.com.
Fox at night and Shannon Bream at 1 a.m. We're going to be talking debate all night long, but right now we're going to be talking and continue to who served in President Obama's administration as the Director of Administration and a senior advisor in the office of Vice President Joe Biden. His Twitter handle is EVELA. Mo, thank you for holding back. We had touched upon, but I'd like to talk about of Joe Biden's competency. There are those out there, even Jake Tapper, who asked his wife, and of course she answered brilliantly as the wife of hopefully the future president, look at Donald Trump. I think people forget Donald Trump has made a lot of gaffes, and some have questioned his mental competency and questioned whether he was in decline as well. So will Joe Biden, if you had to bet, come across competently, and will people have a different idea of him cognitively speaking when they've negative from Donald Trump in the Trump campaign and the Never Biden people regarding his mental stability?
Leslie, first, to those who continue to Rudy Giuliani did this morning, and I found it absolutely disgusting and despicable and offensive, raising dementia conspiracy theories. As the son of a man who suffered from dementia years of his life, I'll tell you something, to throw around those accusations like that, suffer and struggle with dementia, is just absolutely wrong, and it's offensive. Second of all, I think the vice president tonight will absolutely demonstrate that he is competent, that he is confident, vision for the future of our country. Bottom line is his job tonight, in my opinion, and he will do it with absolute sharpness. And that is to let the American people know that the man sitting across the stage or standing across the stage from him has got us in such a chaotic mess. And the vice president's job, in my opinion, tonight to do it clearly, succinctly, and with a vision is to explain, I need to come in and get us out of the mess that man right over there has got feet. And I think he'll do it clearly, Leslie. I don't have any concerns about his mental or cognitive abilities. Again, I find vision, not from you, by the way. I'm talking about the chattering people out there and Rudy Giuliani this morning who I'm not even sure, Anyway, I was going to say something horrible, but I'm not going to say it because it's not good for us to get in the mud with.
Yeah, like Michelle Obama, when they go low, we go high.
Yeah, we're going to go
right.
high. Look, I just think it's ageism, and it bothers me as a gay guy. That bothers me because to me, ageism is no different than when I was bullied growing up on a ranch in South Texas. Knowing that I was gay and I couldn't be who I really was. You know what I'm saying? So
no, I do. The other thing is because you worked with and so closely and know the former vice president so well. This is just my take. He to me seems the type of person that if he did not have the cognitive ability to be president, he wouldn't run.
Oh, that's an excellent point. Let me tell you something. The man's running because he feels a responsibility to bail our country out of a disastrous mess. And so you're absolutely spot on. I've never met a man with such integrity. I'll be honest with you. In all of my years in politics, I've never met an elected official with the integrity. And I'm not talking about just integrity in the traditional sense. I'm talking about human integrity, soulful integrity. To your point, you're spot on. That is exactly.
You know what? And Lindsey Graham agrees with you on that.
He sure does. And I've tweeted that damn video out 100,000 times.
Me too. Both Trump and Biden have tempers, and both of them can use a nasty tone. Do you think they'll be able to control their tempers and tone tonight?
I'll tell you, this is my only concern for the vice president, to be really blunt. It's my only concern for the vice president tonight, because I'll tell you, and I don't blame him for one iota of a second. Donald Trump is going to viciously attack his family and his children and everybody that the vice president loves.
Hunter, he's going to attack Hunter. Do you think he'll attack Beau? Or mention his wife and daughter who passed?
I mean, could he be that stupid? I don't know. But I mean, I'm confident he's going to go after Hunter. This is my only concern for the vice president. He loves his family. And that is very hurtful to him when people attack the people that he loves. And so I just pray and I hope that he recognizes, as my mom used to say to me growing up, honey, consider the source.
Right.
And he's just, as hard as it's going to be,
Leslie.
Also
knowing Donald Trump, he and his camp hopefully can prepare for that.
Well, you would hope, but what are you going to do? Dom Jr., the last 4 videos of him, I don't do drugs, but something's not right. The eyes are all blurry, the speech is all slurred, and I'm not implying that he's on drugs, but something's not right. So,
And by the way, I thought that was so classy. The last question of the final debate, when the moderator said, could you say something nice about one another? And Hillary Clinton said he has very nice children. And he looked and he goes, well, that's very nice if you mean that. And she goes, I do. And because Chelsea and Ivanka are friends. Chelsea's husband is Jewish, and didn't convert. Ivanka's husband is Jewish and she converted. They know each other. People forget there may be politics, but before politics, Donald Trump, his family.
I don't know that they still are today. I have no idea, Leslie, but
yeah, it could be. How on earth does Donald J. Trump defend his record from coronavirus in this pandemic, where the majority of polls show they don't favor his handling of that. Race relations don't show favor handling of that. Replacing Ruth Bader Ginsburg, majority over 60% of people want the seat to be held. Now, the latest revelation about the tax returns, which I'm not sure is going to be as big a deal because, like you say, I mean, these people will follow him into hell. So how does he defend his record? Because I would honestly say Joe Biden has the advantage going in, which is you wanted to make America great again. This is how many died from COVID.
Yeah.
This is how many cities are burning because, you're not taking care of race relations in this country. You care more about the Supreme Court and lying about
It's
something.
almost like you want Joe Biden to look over and say, had we known that was your definition of great, I wish we had known that was your definition of great, right? Because being number one in the world in coronavirus deaths is your definition of great, that kind of thing. But look, I don't know how you defend your record. Look, let's be honest here. There is not a record, okay? A record usually means you've accomplished something and you've succeeded at something. I mean, you could have a bad record, I guess, right? And as you just pointed out perfectly and brilliantly, it's nothing less than a train wreck. If we weren't on air, I'd use my favorite phrase, but it's a cluster.
Yeah.
It's a chaotic cluster.
Yes.
Because we don't want to get you kicked off the airwaves. But it's a chaotic cluster. It is. And so Leslie, the answer is you can't. So here's why this is important. You can't defend your record because it's atrocious. So what do you do when you're flailing, you're losing in all the polls, and you can't defend your record? What do?
You personally attack the guy on the other side of the stage.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to see for 90 minutes tonight, because the guy has no plan for a second term. He didn't have a plan to handle the pandemic to begin with, much less what are you going to do about it now, right? He's trying to hand out cards to seniors in Florida. He's trying every desperate ploy, destroying the United States Postal Service so that voters can't vote, trying to suppress voters. By the way, a lot of people aren't talking about this, but the Trump campaign's voter list with a proportion of African Americans with the word deterrence next to their name. Why aren't people talking about that? You know what that means? That means he specifically was trying to keep African American voters from voting. That is just voter suppression.
Absolutely. We have like 60 seconds. I'm going to try and get in two questions. So be so fast, okay? You had talked about your worry about Biden with his children being attacked. How do you feel that Joe Biden should respond to personal attacks? Because there will be many.
I would simply look over and say, you know what? I'm not going there with you. I'm not going into the mud with you. I'm not going to get into this trashy back and forth brawl with you. I'm going to level with the American people. We have a lot of work to do to recover from the mess you have gotten us into. That's exactly how I would do it right there.
So you're very nice. I would say, Donald, we can go out in the back and settle this like men. But right now, I'm running for president of the United States, and I don't have time to run a daycare center.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. We should have had you in the prep room.
Lastly, should Joe Biden focus on COVID out of the box and for much of the first debate tonight?
Yes. I don't know that I would just do it at the beginning, though. I would probably try to end with COVID, too, because there is no doubt about it in my mind. The economy, the climate, everything right now is being impacted by this man's mishandling.
Absolutely.
Right?
Okay. I guess we are out of time. We're out of time, right? Okay. Mo, I love you. Moe Vela, Twitter at Moe Vela, Moevela. I'm Leslie Marshall. Watch the debate tonight and the post-debate analysis.